Joining me now for an exclusive interview is U.S. Secret Service Director Sean Curran. Director, thank you so much for being with us here today. I would love to start by picking up on what Jeanine Pirro just said, and we both heard there together. She suggested, I believe in that interview, there were only two shooters, Cole Allen and a Secret Service agent, one Secret Service agent. Is that correct?
That is correct. All the evidence that I've seen, the suspect shot our officer point-blank range with a shotgun. Our officer heroically returned fire while being shot point-blank range in the chest with a shotgun and was able to get off 5 shots. It's great training. The officer just acted heroically. Great job.
So the one officer that returned fire is the same officer that was shot by this suspect?
That's correct.
All right, and he got off 5 rounds. And I'd love for you, we appreciate you being with us here today. You know this, there's been a lot of questions and criticism around the Secret Service in the wake of this assassination attempt. I'd love for you to address some of that with us here today. There are people we have seen say, how does he shoot 5 times and never hit the suspect?
That's a great question. And you're right, there are a lot of critics out there. Quite frankly, some of them are our former agents that when they did the job, they weren't in the game. If you want to know stuff about the Secret Service, please ask me. I've actually done the job. But I will tell you, that officer, while being shot, was in the process of falling down and was returning gunfire. To be shot at is not a pleasant thing. And to be able to actually return fire in that rate of speed is just remarkable.
But the suspect was never hit, correct? He was never hit by a bullet.
That is correct. The suspect was not hit.
How did he go to the ground?
It appears that the suspect hit his knee while being engaged by the officer on one of our magnetometer boxes and began to fall to the ground. That's what appears to be. And at that moment is when officers and agents were able to subdue him and pile on top of him.
That's a pretty quick response. He goes to the ground and almost immediately he has officers dogpiling him?
It was immediate. It was right at the MAC checkpoint, which was just remarkable, the speed. When you talk about an individual who is determined to do what they do, and that speed, you're talking almost about 4 seconds from start to finish there, that officer was able to return fire while being shot at, and he was subdued shortly thereafter.
That is pretty incredible. Just as a curiosity, Director, we're seeing some pictures on our screen. Allen doesn't have a shirt on at the time he's subdued on the ground. Why is that?
That's correct. Well, I will tell you also, there were some reports that he was by the stairs. That's incorrect. He was taken down by the magnetometer checkpoint. And for officer safety and everyone's safety, it appeared that there was some type of tactical vest that he was wearing. So those officers again bravely removed that clothing to ensure that he did not have any other devices on him, and then relocated him to another area to get him safely away from the scene. Okay. So that is why he wound up where he was. He
was wearing a tactical vest. Also, as we just reported a moment ago, he had a lot of other materials, wire cutters and so forth. Any indication of what he intended to do with pliers and wire cutters?
Not at this time. Obviously, the FBI is investigating. They would have more information on that.
Okay. Let's talk about the security setup that evening. We have had former Secret Service agents on this program in the past week. And what I've been led to understand is you set up concentric circles around the protected target, in this case, the president. And the most inner circle is the protection around the president himself in his vicinity. What I was told, and I'm happy for you to be here to correct us if any of this is wrong, is the middle circle is the magnetometers. There is another one outside the building that sort of vets and keeps protesters away. And I think there's a lot of questions about where those magnetometers are in relationship to the president and the ballroom and how far away, and was this man capable of getting too close?
Again, great question. And some of those agents, I know who they are, probably haven't been operational in about 25 years. A lot of things have changed since then. What I will tell you is that magnetometer checkpoint is the outer perimeter. What they're referring to on the outside is a vehicle checkpoint. Very different, and they're not aware of the distance. They're also not aware of why we set those magnetometers up in that place. We do a study. We do blast analysis. And from start to finish, you're talking almost 355 feet. From magnetometer to podium, that's almost 120 yards. That's a long distance to get to.
So 120 yards from the magnetometers, did you say to the stage where the president sat?
Well, there's also you're talking two separate floors. So you're talking the terrace level is above where the ballroom was, and there's 3 terrain features in between. So from the magnetometers, you have some hallway, and then you have to ascend one set of stairs to a platform, to another set of stairs, down, around, to a double set of doors that would lead you into that ballroom. That's a long way to go.
And I would presume, Director, that along the way, were he able to get further than he did, he would still be encountering other agents along the way?
And that's where our multi-layer approach comes in. We have officers and agents in between. We have a rifle team and other assets that we wouldn't get into on air, but that's all that's in between, and then other protective details and multiple guns in between.
Okay, then let's address the hotel. There's been a lot of conversations about the fact that he was checked into the hotel and that gave him a unique proximity to the president. Is that the case? People have talked about whether or not this should be at the ballroom, but tell me what kind of security complication the hotel made for you at the Secret Service.
Well, I'll tell you, it's 2 separate sites. So you have a ballroom and then you have a hotel, and in between you have a breezeway and a hallway. So it's 2 separate sites, and you have to traverse through, which is why we do what we do. We do analysis. We have teams that go out and do an advance, and we treated it like 2 separate sites.
Okay, do I understand this correctly? He took a hotel elevator down out of his room into what I presume was a hotel lobby, and then was capable of making himself capable of moving from that hotel lobby into the terrace area where the magnetometers are set up. Is that, and so he or any other hotel guest could have made their way from the hotel lobby into the terrace area, but at that point they would have encountered magnetometers?
Well, he actually descended the stairs, and he moved into a long hallway, still separated by a double set of doors, which is once you pass through that double set of doors is when you enter into the area where you have the magnetometer set up, and that's where he broke into a full sprint.
Right into a full sprint when he comes through those double doors, right?
Yes.
When he was just short of making it to the magnetometers?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious, one last thing on this, Director. When you look at the entirety of it, I believe that President Trump has said this. I know that Vice President J.D. Vance has said this. What we saw on Saturday night was success. When you look at how this unfolded from your perspective, was this a success? Could it have been done better?
Yes. Well, you just brought up President Trump. I just would like to take a moment to thank him. I know he doesn't like the spotlight sometimes, but what I will tell you is he took a moment to call our officer that was shot, and as always, a class act, and very grateful that he took the time to do that. Now to your question. The site was set up perfectly. I will tell you, I would not change the site again. And yeah, I think the site was set up perfectly.
Yeah. You bring up President Trump, Director. Such a unique situation in terms of, sadly, the number of assassination attempts that have been perpetrated on President Trump. Also, he's President Trump, and he's got his own opinions. He's got a big personality. And earlier today at the White House, Director, he said this when asked about the potentiality of wearing a bulletproof vest.
Is there talks about you potentially wearing a bulletproof vest moving forward, given you have now been shot at?
I don't know if I can handle looking 20 pounds heavier.
Have you, I don't know if you could hear that, Director, but he said he wouldn't be very excited about looking 20 more pounds, adding 20 pounds with a bulletproof vest. Is that something you try to convince him of, to wear a bulletproof vest?
That's not something I would talk about on air.
I understand.
That would be a separate conversation.
I understand. The president brought it up today. We thought maybe that would be an interesting perspective that he brings to the table. Doesn't want to look overweight. But so at this point, Director, you look at everything that went down this weekend. It was a success. Would it be easier? And I'm asking you this from a logistical perspective, not a political perspective. Would it be easier to secure an event like this in something that was already on a secure location, like a proposed White House ballroom, as opposed to a public venue like a hotel?
Look, I always prefer to be at the White House. It's something that we completely control. And look, there's an impact to the community. You know, when we do these sites, there is an impact to not only traffic but the community, and there's budget concerns there. So if you're able to do something in one secure place all the time, that lessens the burden on all the surrounding areas. So that makes total sense.
Right. I want to leave you with one last thing. I brought up the Vice President. He had some very kind words for the job that was done by the Secret Service on Saturday night. Here's what he told me yesterday.
The thing that I really gained an appreciation for, Will, is what an amazing job the agents of the Secret Service do. You saw they went right to me. They went right to the President of the United States. They put their lives in harm's way. I just feel very grateful to them and very grateful for what they do, and frankly, grateful to God that that agent who was shot was not seriously hurt. It could have been a lot worse, but the law enforcement did a great job, Will, and we should all be grateful for that.
Director, your reaction to what you hear there from the Vice President?
Yeah, look, he's an amazing man. The Vice President and President are just really great protectees. They're great to us. They're great to work with. But I will tell you, look, this shows what the brave men and women of the Secret Service do day in and day out. It's an amazing job that they do every day. Usually goes unnoticed, and it's a hard job. It's a hard job on everyone's life, their personal lives, and yet they still show up. They're patriots. They want to protect this nation. And I'm grateful to be able to work with these men and women. They're so brave, and it's incredible.
Well, Director Curran, we appreciate your service from Butler to today, and thank you for giving us this time today to understand some of the insight and logistics behind what happened on Saturday night. Thank you, Director
Well, thank
Curran.
you for the time. Look forward to seeing you in the future.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.